Here we are this morning in the Hotel Puente Romano, of course one of Marbella's most famous landmarks. This whole complex was designed by the now very famous architect Melvin Villarroel. But did you know that it was designed originally in the 1970s to be housing for local Marbella people? It was never intended to be a luxury hotel. We're going to find out all about the history of it because we're very lucky today. We can speak to Melvin Villarroel's son, Pablo. Let's go and meet him. About how Melvin Villarroel, your father, came to be in Marbella.
So he was invited by a teacher of him to go to Spain to one of his other pupils that was here to work for him. And in particular in a building that now there were used to be three in Villarroel, which was this tall tower,
the Torre Real.
13 floors, you know, the Torre Real.
Yeah.
So while he was doing that, he realized that it was wrong, and he was invited to be part of a competition to do 3 towers in this plot. My father started doing that, and he realized that that was the wrong thing for Marbella. So he managed to convince him by taking him back to his roots. He took his car, and the first time the Sevilla invited him, but then he invited him to see his own old white towns, the woodwork, the brickwork, you know, so that he got, how do you say, enchanted back with his own culture. Because the Spanish, my father always said, most of the South Americans have done in the past most of it here, because they have interpreted the Andalusian way. And the Spanish have forgotten the Andalusian way. Yeah. Because they want to be modern. They want to be modern, they have forgotten. So he convinced him to go back and even retrieve wood, old wood, the big bricks that you have in the plaza. If you see, there's a tower in Puente Romano with the pigeonholes. Tulio Pina was convinced to do a town-like complex. But he told him, very important that you fit the 30,000 square meters buildability. So what he did is he designed it in a way, by using the height of the natural terrain, he built it in a way that they were interlocking and the views were not disturbed. The river was more than a floor or a floor and a half, almost 2 floors, lower than the ground on the edges. This is where you could play with the landscaping and make the stepping from the units to each other and towards the river.
But so, your father chose to incorporate by substituting it with an artificial stream.
Exactly. Then he said, we cannot destroy the nature. Yeah. There is a Roman bridge, there must be a river, but we're hiding the river. We hide the river, but we need to put back the river. Via Romana, the Via Augusta, went through here from the Cadiz area to Rome.
So just to clarify, this very bridge that we're
was
standing
the width
next to,
of the road of the Via Augusta from
so 100 years before Christ, the Romans were carrying their goods, specifically this tuna oil that was so precious to them,
to Rome, to Italy. And the river, this goes deeper. The river is about 2.5 meters. 3 meters deeper. So the water was deeper than this. So the bridge is even deeper. It's just that we've built on top of the tunnel, we built the water, the water pond, the water artificial. And the water comes out there.
Which is being pumped around in a circle.
From bottom of the beach, it's pumped up 300 meters up to here, 20 meters height difference, and then it goes by itself down.
Originally, your father was instructed to design this. It was
a competition. Yeah, it was housing for local people. It was designed like that. The only thing, my father never believed in this concept because he thought this area was going to be good.
Because he already knew about the Marbella Club. He already knew what Puerto Banús had done, had set the precedent for the Andalusian.
And he put his studio, where we're standing now, We were the only, our colleagues would tell him, what are you doing in the 80s? What are you doing in Puente Romano? That's so far away. You have to come down to the city to have your studio in the city. And he would always say, wait.
Oh,
So he knew, my father knew.
Yeah. He was a visionary, your father, for sure.
He was.
But just give us a little bit of an idea about how it changed in terms of ownership and how each of those owners put their mark on it.
The Sevillano did not sell any units at all. So when Mr. Almidani, he was a promoter, but he was looking to do an hotel. So he had looked a lot of properties in LA and Paris, in the Côte d'Azur, and he came with his plane to Malaga, and he stayed over in Marbella Club. Prince Hohenlohe and Jaime de Mora, they told him about this Sevillano promoter that was doing this project here. So he came over and he made an offer to him to buy it all under the condition that his architect could show him before Thursday, because he was here on Tuesday, that this could be converted into a hotel.
So that architect being your father?
Yes.
So Mr. Almidani suggested that I can commit to this project as long as by Thursday, Mr. Villarroel.
Because I'm leaving to see more other properties. I think in Miami, he was seeing other properties.
Wow.
That's how it was. And then obviously Tulio Pina, the Sevilla promoter, was very nervous that my father would achieve this, because it would be for him incredible if in middle of the crisis
he
sells the whole thing. And he sold it.
Your father didn't sleep for 2 days, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just sketching and...
Exactly.
Wow.
So he showed him. The good thing is that my father had always studied this as units like hotel. So although the promoter asked him for the housing, my father always thought of it like an hotel. For example, all the back of the house of the plaza, where the restaurants today have that huge back of the house that makes it possible to cook properly, prepare the food properly, that was done then by my father. So he had in mind all these things. If you look today, for example, at the tennis club, and you look at the tennis club before the 1990, you would have seen that the tennis club is in the middle of nothing.
Yes.
And there's pictures of that.
Yes.
You see nothing in the tennis club. Yeah. My father had a little yellow roll with a master plan that he had shown Monsieur Vidani to do Marina del Puente. And the whole 3 phases of Marina del Puente were going around the tennis club, so that it became a resort together with Puente Romano. And he made that happen. Marina del Puente's, for example, name comes because there was planned to be a harbor bigger than Puerto Banús.
There was going to be a marina built here.
Yes.
Which would incorporate, first of all, would allow for a lot more coastal water area.
Exactly.
For shops, restaurants, mooring of nearly 400 boats.
Yes. That's why, for example, the boulevard from the bridge to the sea was given the name of my father. That's the avenue of Melvin Villarroel.
What happened to those plans?
I not only have the plans, I have also the model in a storage. I have.
And why was that project never taken to
fruition? Because the owner died. The moment the owner died,
Mr. Almidani.
Mr. Midani, and at that moment, the forces of making something happen like this, they diffuse.
Isn't it incredible when you actually look back at the history of Marbella as a big area, how significant individual people were? Yes. And that's, I think, what we take for granted. All of us who are privileged enough to live and work in this location today, all of the people who come from all over the world because they love the climate and they love all of the lifestyle, and yet we have to really understand why it is as it is, and it's because of people like your father and of course you and your 3 siblings who've continued to keep it that way. Yeah. After Mr. Almidani died, what was the history then? Who came along?
Then after that, family Shamoun, David Shamoun,
yes,
the father of Daniel, who is now taking over Puente Romano, but family Shamoun took over both hotels. Daniel really took over and he changed the concept, and having variation of food and doing really what my father had thought of it at the beginning. And he did, well, I think he has now 8 or 9 restaurants, scattered around in different corners around Puente Romano, and that gives the life that you're talking today. So this has become a stronger hub. This area has become a stronger hub since Puente Romano has, and especially Shamoun, has given it a food and beverage luxury level put into it.
Yeah, allowing for the sort of quality that people would be looking for,
exactly,
to allow them to come and then return and to keep that, because at the end of the day it's a business, it has to be a profitable business.
Exactly.
Let's look again more specifically at your father, because your father's influence on the wider Costa del Sol, and in fact a lot of Iberia, other areas of Iberia as well, can't be underestimated. And this is always why I come back to these interviews with architects, because I think it's important to understand that the old school architects who came here in the 60s and the 70s, most of them were from South America.
Yes.
Few of them were Spanish, if any.
Yeah.
They were either South American or perhaps some Europeans as well.
Yeah.
And that footprint, that quality and that branding, if you like, that they put on this coast has been undeniably appreciated. But over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe a little bit more, 20 years, was forgotten a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, came the big developers with deep pockets, looking to optimize on what they can do for luxury and high-end clients in and around Marbella. And the little bit of the quality and the feeling was lost, I think.
There's many things that actuate on a problem, on a thing to happen. Yeah. So there is demographic, there is social, and there is the economic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. I think it all started with people wanting more modern architecture. Okay. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. But then the economic came into place, and more modern, simpler became cheaper. You know, if you do a cube, white cube with a window,
you can replicate it,
and you save yourself from doing expensive wood pergolas. Yeah. You save money, right? Yeah. So the economic always plays a game in whatever we do in life, in the growth of our life and the history. You know, so the economic purpose is what overrun us. And then came these promoters that you say, that a lot of them came down because in crisis they were not doing well in the rest of Spain, but here it was okay to work. And then the few architects that we were trying to mingle with those difficult issues, it still convinced the promoter, well, you need pergolas because of the weather you cannot do cubes. We were overridden by all those promoters that used other architects, brought their architects because they were cheaper, and also because we couldn't do so much. You know, we've done 1.5 million square meters of luxury living, built, closed, and more than 20 million of landscaped gardens. That's a lot of, but
a lot of design.
But we're little compared to others that are doing them. They don't even go to site. They do their projects and they don't go to site. Someone else goes to the site. We still go to our sites.
Yeah.
You know, and my father used to go to the site, so we're doing the same philosophy.
Yeah.
We don't do a job if we're not allowed to go to the site.
You're living and working within you're practicing what you preach.
So this is the difficulty was that we were overrun by the amount of need of modern living, and we were not prepared. So we didn't have the 3D. We're doing now everything with Revit, with Beam. You know, we work directly in 3D now, so the client can see it right away. Before we were drawing with AutoCAD two dimension, but we were doing our renderings by hand.
Yeah.
How fast can you do that?
No.
So we were overrun. We were simply overrun. So more architects came and they brought the architecture, the international architecture from the north. They brought it down here and boom, put it. And that was a mistake.
Of course, there was an influence from those people looking for homes who were perhaps looking for something which wasn't particularly relevant to the environment in which we live. This brings me to a quote from your father, which is very relevant to what we're talking about. He said, "Architecture should reflect nationality, regionality, language, and overall characteristics that distinguish one person from another, just like music can reflect nationality. No one expects to hear Spanish music composed by a Swede."
Correct. This loss of touch of the place becomes because we've become globally accessible from everywhere at any moment.
Yeah.
How do you do real estate now? And how did you do real estate then? If you ask Christopher Clover, for example, from Panorama, or Cristina Sekeli, you had to take the guy by hand and you had to show him where the place was, what orientation, where he was going to buy a house, an apartment, or whatever. Now they send it to Finland. The guy looks at the 3Ds and the view of the sea and all this virtual reality. And it's going to get worse because the metaverso will become, the guy will go into metaverso, will feel like he's in the beach, and he will not even come here.
Yeah, it's already happening.
But what happens? We don't smell. You need to smell. You need to get the feeling. How does it smell here? How does it feel? Because when we see, we don't feel. When we touch or when we get the gusto from a food, it's not each thing individual. All things need to be together.
Yeah.
And that makes the feel of place.
Yeah.
And that feel of place, we have lost. And we, the architects, we are responsible to get this back. If we really respect this area, we need to go back to this essence of the human being.
Yeah, it's something that I've come to repeatedly when I've been interviewing people like you and other people who've been here for a long time, and certainly it's something that echoes with me. As a real estate agent, I'm very guilty of being very much attracted to the authenticity.
Yeah.
Take me into an old villa with an empty swimming pool and broken windows and my heart starts racing. That's what I love, because I start to feel the authenticity, the original feeling of Marbella. And it was the smell, the sounds, the colours.
The colours, the light color.
The light, the intensity of the light, the way the light changes throughout the different parts of the year.
Yes.
And this is what I hear more and more when I speak with people like you is, you know, that's where that's what we know, because we were fortunate enough to experience it, because we were lucky enough to be here in those times in Portugal or in Spain. And I'm feeling now that other people, clients, people who are committing themselves to this coast are understanding it because they've had the experience of being able to look at your architecture, for example, and understand how special that is. That brings me to the project that you're working on at the moment, which I know is still in its formative stages, but is quite well advanced. And that's, of course, up in Real de la Quinta.
Yes.
And a project which is very modern and contemporary, but absolutely adheres to the principles that your father wanted.
Exactly. It's sleek in design, but it hugs to the mountain and it gives the privacy between the units for the view and for all it's all the concepts that my father, that we have been defending before my father and us after, about the integration of the outside with the inside and bringing the sun and giving the protection that you need today.
Well, to quote your father again, he said, "Where the decision has already been made to return to our origins, this is where architecture should be, to an architecture rooted in the most essential and basic things, to an area's local culture and a renewed and strengthened relationship with nature."
That's a palm tree from Africa, the true. But you see, these are chefleras. The mixture of plants that you see here is because in that time, my father had no access to nurseries. He had to go to different fincas and buy the plants himself.
gosh.
So this garden is very varied because of that.
So sourcing, as well as sourcing stones and wood and other pieces to actually build the structures,
structure,
he was also sourcing the plants.
The plants, because
build
this area was not famous for having plants. You see robellini, which are totally tropical. You have some fruit trees there. The mixture is brutal. You have magnolias, bamboo. How do you put all this together without them really killing each other? Because this is the problem. When you put plants that need different water, how do you do them in a way that they don't kill each other? Because a pine tree doesn't need the amount of water that a tropical tree needs. So you need to keep the distance, and you need the pine tree to give shadow so that the tropical plant has more freshness. And that's what experts say. This has a Marbella has a microclimate, but Puente Romano has another microclimate within the microclimate. We have to fight to be able to get back the home feeling that the original houses in thousands of years had, or still have some of them. It cannot be that our architecture in a few years, someone comes and says, no, I don't like this, I throw it down, I put this other thing. That would be sad.
I think it's the opposite. I feel now, I take a lot of comfort in what I'm seeing in terms of clients' demands, clients really turning towards looking for the authenticity that reflects Andalusia in this case.
Yes.
And actually, I do believe that we will see the tearing down of some of the very contemporary stuff, which just doesn't fit here.
It doesn't fit.
You know, this climate is not made for flat roofs and huge windows.
Exactly.
You know, huge windows, yes, but then they have to, as you say, they have to be.
We do double. We're doing a house in Zagaleta right now, Villa Enzo, which has probably the tallest glass ever put in Spain, 7 meters 50, with a lift moving the windows, and it spans 20 meters. The pergola that goes over spans another 12 meters out, and it covers the whole 20 meters. It's a very modern building. It has some tile roofs on top, but it's a mixture of Andalusia, but in a modern style.
Just before we go and have a look outside and walk around in Puente Romano, let me ask you one last question, and I hope not to put you on the spot, but how responsible do you think that town planners should be about what we're talking about? Because it seems to me that within the town planning, within Mijas, Marbella, Benavis, the planners look at whether or not your project is able to be built technically, in a technical way. They don't seem to be interested in whether or not it fits into a landscape.
In Spain, the town halls don't have the budget to allocate this type of, call it aesthetic architecture planners. Urban planning, as we know from the United States, for example, there is departments of urban planning that can do this, but here they don't. They have to just check off you have the parameters of your license. We don't. There's no culture for this. There's not a department never thought, not even in Madrid, and nowhere is this. In Barcelona, they have a little more touch about this, about the roofs, but it's more technical. It's never something aesthetic.
I mean, that's
it's our responsibility when we do planning, not designing the building. When we do planning, when we do master plans as architects, we cannot let our engineers do that. Plan parcial. Proyecto de urbanización. That's what urban planning is all about. There you define the scope. You define what the movement is of the building.
Yeah.
In my planning, I define that the ground floor wall cannot continue over a second floor. Yes. With that, I'm forcing the architect to move back.
Yes.
And I'm saying that he has to move back at least 2 meters.
Right.
By doing that, he can do a roof, he can do a terrace. The building becomes already ornate enough or moving enough, and it hugs to the ground better.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
But that's me.
Yes.
I have to specify this.
I see.
The town halls are not prepared for this. They don't have nor the experience nor the knowledge to do this. I know that some of the architects, my colleagues, they do it themselves as their own wish. But then we're stopped by the promoters because the promoters want maximum occupation in all floors.
The architects and your architect colleagues who do this are probably not Spanish.
Exactly. Marco Sainz, for example, is
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
and you know him very well.
Yeah.
And there is more, but they're all either South American or from abroad.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
What do you say to the idea of the hub of Marbella, if you like, becoming so developed, perhaps overdeveloped? The infrastructure was not foreseen that would be needed to support the interests that we have today.
This is because the old planning was not thought to have this volume of
they
density.
Wouldn't have foreseen it, would
No,
they? They wouldn't have known
didn't.
how successful this would
No,
become.
they didn't. But in very few parts of the world is the case where they have foreseen this. It's usually younger architecture or younger history, like United States, where the history is 200 years and they don't have anything old, so they can start from scratch.
Yeah.
So the best planners, for me, the best urban planners and most tasteful designers of how urbanization should look are in the United States. Now it's becoming more and more difficult because I get plots to design on them and I already have the difficulties of noise, road noise, or bad orientation, or the slant of the land going other way to the sea. You know, you've seen the sea, but the slant goes the other way or to the north.
Yes.
So you have to sell, but that's the ability of the architect that with experience that he can accommodate to these different situations and do the best out of it. So I'm not saying we have to go back to the 60s where this was nothing. You could see there was one house or two houses before Puerto Banús. And I remember coming from Marbella to Puente Romano and there was the feria. The only thing that was there was the feria because from Meliá Don Pepe to here there was nothing. Yeah, that was nice time. But if we always think of it looking back and crying about what we had before, it's never going to happen because we are 7,000 million inhabitants in this world and growing.
Yeah.
So we have to play with what we have, but do the best out of it.
And what do you see, knowing the incredible emphasis here on desire to be here and the amount of money that seems to be coming into this coast? I mean, the luxury market, whatever happens, is here to stay. I'm certain of that. I don't see any change in that.
Because the original factors why people like to come here have not changed.
Yes.
The Andalusian person, I'm now Andalusian, but an Andalusian person is a very happy, outgoing. Is not like the French.
No.
You know, they're outgoing. They want, if you don't speak the Spanish, he helps you by speaking bad English.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
he answers to you. He helps you. He's very helpful. He's a person that is very down to earth. Your gardener brings you from his finca tomatoes because he wants you to try his tomatoes. You know, the person here will never change, and it's the same person that we had 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And the second is the sun. 300 days of sun. Top that one.
Yeah.
Anywhere, where?
Yeah.
Tell me because I don't know.
Yeah.
300 days of sun, of blue sky, and 30 days of rain is nothing.
Yeah.
It's a big, this is the two things. And then this now comes the addition of why people are paying more. Because in old times they wouldn't pay that much. Why they're paying more is because we have an infrastructure of restaurants, variety of food, restaurants, services, doctors, not hospitals, doctors. You can get doctors for anything you want in the coast.
Yeah.
Maybe your insurance does not cover it. This is another problem that we need to solve. But the doctors are here because the doctors prefer to work here rather than work in Berlin.
This is when I first came to live in Spain 22 years ago, and it was still even back then very much a place where the expats were either tourists
Yes.
or retirees.
Or retirees.
And just in the short time that I've been here, and I'm one of the people I'm about to speak about, what has happened is that people have decided to commit to this full-time. Permanent. As
Correct.
a permanent resident where I pay my taxes, my money goes into this coast, into this area.
Correct.
My money helps to improve the infrastructure, which encourages other people to come to this area.
Correct.
And that's absolutely correct. Bringing my child up here, putting him in Spanish school.
This was a touristic place with houses for the summer. They were not well built.
Yes.
Because they were on the ground. They had no basement. They were on the ground. You had humidities in the winter. Who cared? Because a house with humidities in the winter was a very nice house for the summer, fresh.
Yes, exactly.
Right? I heard this a lot. You know, the floor was this crushed marble floor, you know, typical for houses.
Yeah.
That was cold in the winter. You couldn't be in the house in the
Yeah.
winter because it was humid. But in the summer it was great because it was fresh. It was the natural air conditioning.
Yeah.
You know, this has changed.
Absolutely.
The clients today, they're asking us for the highest luxury. Actually, I have German architects coming down here to see the houses that I'm doing because they want to see this luxury, this high level of installations, domotics, and they want to see that over there, but they don't have that over there. So they have the technology, but they don't apply it everywhere. A Bulthaus kitchen, some guy will get a Bulthaus kitchen, but that house will not have domotics, for example. Here we have the Bulthaus kitchen, the domotics, you know, all the floor heating over the 1,200 square meter house, basement, everything has floor heating. You know, it's intelligently managed by the sun because we have solar photovoltaic panels that help the machines. It goes together, the residual heat goes into the pool. The pool is heated also, you know, it has a special cover in the pool that also gains sun gains energy from the sun when you cover it. So you start adding, and the guy says, whoa, here I can live like I can live nowhere else. Plus, I have the Spanish, the infrastructure, and the sun. And then that makes it.
Pablo, listening to you then, I think to the history of your father and what you've told me about what a visionary he was and what a difference he made. And I can only sit here and imagine how very proud he would have been to hear what you've just spoken about then, because actually you've taken his legacy and you're running with it, and you're actually encompassing everything he taught you and everything he believed, but you're actually bringing it into a contemporary time, into a time where we can have all of the luxury that we want, but we can still stay true to the roots of this location.
Thank you very much.
I've got goosebumps.
I get goosebumps too, because I think my father is here.
A real pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so very much. Absolute honour. Thank you.